Digital experiences is more than just a user expectation. It's a requirement for businesses to maintain loyalty and drive revenue. That's why product teams at leading SaaS companies use FullStory, the digital experience intelligence platform that tells you everything you need to know about how people interact with your digital experience. FullStory automatically uncovers issues that cause users to drop out of funnels, as well as highlights what's working so you can easily prioritize which improvements to make next to increase conversion rates. Dive deeper into sessions and press play to see the real customer experience behind the data in high fidelity, private by default session replay. Once you prioritize an impactful issue, solving it together across teams is easy. FullStory powers seamless communication by integrating with your existing collaboration tools like Jira and Slack. This will link your teams to the exact place and time where an issue occurred so they can start working on a fix right away. With a single click, engineers can access comprehensive developer tools and find out what was slow, broken, or buggy. And product owners can share opportunities for growth to inspire action across teams. Use our powerful yet intuitive interface to ask questions across your entire data set, or get answers to questions you didn't even know to ask with our easy-to-digest dashboards. Understand where users are most engaged with instantly generated, fully retroactive heat maps. And finally, measure the outcomes of your efforts and rest easy knowing your next user won't run into the same problems. Create a more perfect digital experience for your SaaS business with FullStory. Visit fullstory.com to get started today.
Thanks for tuning in to the Product-Led Festival. We really hope you're enjoying the festival so far, because we've got even more insights heading your way. All sessions are designed to be interactive and give you the chance to engage with our speakers, so come ready to get involved with your questions and comments. For all things product-led growth, don't forget to check out the Product-Led Alliance memberships at productledalliance.com. Sit back and enjoy the next session.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Product-Led Festival. I'm really excited to introduce our next panel for today, who will be discussing product management in the remote working era. And I will hand you over to our moderator for the session, Alessandro. Over to you.
Hello everyone, and thanks Caitlin for the introduction. Happy to be here. So let's start right away. We'll do a first quick round of introduction, and then we'll take the discussion from there. If you have any questions at any point, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll collect them there, and we will either answer them as we go, or at the end, depending on how the conversation goes. But anything you would like to know, please put it in the chat. So I'll start with a quick intro on my side. My name is Alessandro. I'm head of product management at TUI Musement since about a year and a half. Before, I was working at Booking for a number of years, Booking.com in Amsterdam. I'm originally Italian, and today I'm connecting from Milan. I'll be your host, and I have the pleasure today of moderating this great panel with some great folks. So we'll start with a round of introduction. Ronke, you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you guys for having me. I'm Ronke Majikadumi, Senior Product Manager at PayPal, and I am here in San Jose, California.
Great. You want to nominate the next?
Yes, I will nominate my colleague from Calendly.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Adam. I'm a senior product manager for enterprise security and compliance at Calendly. I'm coming to you from Austin, Texas. One of the things that's been really exciting about the last year is that Calendly actually went 100% remote. So this is a very, very timely panel for me to be on. So I'm very happy to be here. Give it over to Remy.
Hi, thank you. I'm Remy. I'm a group product manager at Culture Trip, coming to you from London. Prior to being at Culture Trip, I was at The Economist newspaper for 9 years. And especially in that environment when we had to sort of switch to fully remote working, not just in the product organization, but also working across an editorial organization that was used to sit side by side. It was quite an interesting experience that we've learned from a lot. Hand it over to Sumita.
Hey everyone, I'm Sumita. I'm a senior product manager and I lead Zoom strategic integrations. So I lead both their core integrations and also their Zoom apps. As most of you know, Zoom has seen like, an infant to a teenage growth in probably the last 2 years during the pandemic. So it's been a very exciting time at Zoom. And I think this panel about remote working era is at the very right time in this conversation. Back to Alessandro.
Great, perfect. Thanks everyone for the introduction. Yeah, we were joking before offline that we have people really from all over the world, right? We have people spanning from the Bay Area in San Francisco to London to Italy, the mid of the US, and I can see also in the chat we have Texas, London, Lagos, Nigeria, Chicago. So we were joking that in terms of time zones, we span all the way from coffee to beer or wine, depending on where you are located. So that's one thing that has changed, I guess, with the remote working setup. So in my experience, when I left the office, I still remember on the 3rd of March of 2020, I thought I was coming back the next day. And as it turns out, I never did. I think that was an experience common to most people. Anyone who wants to share, maybe start from there, what their experience was at the start of this and how did it feel?
I can start. So when we came home March 10th, it felt like we thought our company was overreacting. We thought, oh, we're going to be back to work in about a month. And then a month went to 3 months. So in that time, we tried things like creating channels, where we would put pictures of what everybody was drinking, coffee, and so forth. We tried having virtual after office drinks. We tried having virtual lunch and learn. We tried so many different things just to keep all of us connected. And as I mentioned in the past, it sort of started out. Those are some of the things that we tried. We even tried baking and cooking recipes and live cooking as well. Adam, I'm not sure what you guys ended up doing on your end.
Yeah, so when COVID happened, I was in my previous role at IBM, and I think product management at IBM is a little bit different. We typically handle a little bit more of a front end type of role with our customers. So we did a lot of traveling. So we went from traveling probably 2 times a month to 0, which actually made our jobs operate a little bit differently. So we started getting into more of the day-to-day. We started to be really interactive with our development teams and our marketing teams. And so I think product management in my previous life changed overnight. And we definitely had to learn a different way of operating. How about Remy or Smita?
Yeah, I think I totally understand where Adam and Ronki are coming from, and this is some of very similar experience for myself. I was actually when COVID started, I was probably 2 roles before, so I've sort of moved roles during COVID. So it was a very interesting offboarding, onboarding experience as well. Sort of meeting colleagues virtually and then parting ways. So it's a very different experience. But the role I was back when COVID started, we had a very strong engineering presence and design presence in China, and things sort of trickled down from our teams in China very early. So the company I was, Maxer, we went to work from home mid-Feb, which was like way ahead of everyone around us. It was like, were we? And people did not even understand at that point as why are you working from home? What's going on? So I think it was a different way because we had colleagues who were experiencing something totally different, and most of us here in the Bay Area, at least at that point, weren't able to connect with it. But in a way, it was helpful because I was still in collaboration space, have been there for a little bit now. We quickly jumped on to the idea of how do we improve these tools that we're using every day to support something that is more long-term, not just like, a hybrid model that we've been using collaboration tools for quite some time now. So I think that transition was very quick. But what it led was that our current processes that we had, like, in-office stand-ups, engineering calls, what time everybody would get into these meetings, that changed like drastically. Half of Markstra's team wasn't available at that point. So how do you start pivoting? How do you start getting creative? Kids at home. So stand-ups started, instead of 10 a.m., they started being like later in the evening. or during nap times or after dinners. And we started accommodating all this stuff. But then I think it was very reactive. It wasn't like a planned approach at that point. But once the idea set in that we're going to be in this state for, 2 months have passed, we need to a little bit something more concrete. I think that is when that real pivot happened and started that long-term plan of how do we sustain this? How do you keep your team so involved? How do you make sure that they don't lose that interaction that they've been having with you? And I think we can go a little bit deeper into this, but I think once the year-end perf cycle hit, the conversations were very different. So I think there was all these questions that just started popping up maybe 2 months after, or 2-3 months after the real lockdown started. And I think it was a very interesting time for, I assume, for all of us.
Remy, anything you want to add maybe on your side? Otherwise, I have a question.
No, I think no other insights that haven't already been mentioned.
So my question is to you, Adam. You said you are now working in a company that's full remote, like 100% remote,
100%.
not planning to go back at any point. Right?
No, we got rid of our corporate headquarters. So we used to be based in Atlanta, and now we've opened the doors to hire really anywhere, which is obviously they brought me in. I'm from Austin, and so we've actually grown a number of different people within the Austin area that we've also started hiring from the Bay Area and all around the US, really.
Yeah. So, but this is something that is happening after is it a consequence of the situation, or was it already planned before?
No, it was well, I don't know if you would call it a consequence, but it was definitely something that was decided after the fact. So this decision was in middle of 2021. We still had our office in Atlanta when I joined back in August. They were still cleaning it up, actually. So it's relatively recent.
But now you cut all ties to material possession. You went full. you went full digital. Nice. And
yes.
what would you think is the best thing about the current setup, other than the fact that obviously they could hire you and now you have a job? But what do you think? What do you think is the best part of being fully remote? Which is half a joke, by the way, because I think opening up the job market is a great benefit.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that you risk when you still have a kind of a hub, so to speak, what happens is, people still have that interaction that they typically had within the office, and companies are actually going back to the office now if they still had one. So for us, since we don't have a centralized hub, I'm not worried about things that are happening when I'm not there. Everyone is operating in the same model. So, people aren't walking down the hallways and talking, and then that isn't getting documented, or people are having these sidebar meetings, and then that never makes its way to anybody else. So since everyone is operating the same way, we have a mutual understanding. We are speaking the same language when we're in the meetings together. So that is really helpful.
I think one of the things that was discussed at the beginning of this transition was, indeed, it could work as long as everyone is in either remote or in the office. Maybe it becomes a little more awkward if it's a hybrid situation. So is there anyone who's actually experiencing a hybrid approach right now?
I think we're in a situation where the offices are back open and people can come back in if they want. And I don't know about you guys, but the first couple of days that I went into the office, I was like, I'm so unproductive when I go into the office, because all of a sudden, most of the time is spent on the social element and on the productive element, which is a real shift. You had to get back to sort of balancing that element of spending time with your colleagues and having these conversations, whilst also sort of knuckling down and getting things done. And I think the other thing that was really noticeable was the lack of sort of an office environment that allows for that, right? All of a sudden you need all of these little booths where you can have a soundproof sort of space to yourself to have a catch up, or to have a stand up, or to do all these kind of things where you most of the time are on a video call, and office space wasn't actually set up for that. So those for me were two real interesting observations of going back to the hybrid model, which, to be fair, I'm a complete I'm for entirely. I think I quite enjoy the ability to get stuff done, not having to commute. But still, I think, especially in product management, like face-to-face contact with your customers, with the rest of your stakeholders and with your teams is really, really important. So I think a hybrid model is here to stay as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I can see some people, by the way, putting some comments in the chat. So indeed, if you want to participate in the discussion, feel free to pop something in there, and I will do my best to read it out and incorporate it. So I see, for example, Brandy saying 100% hybrid is more awkward than all in person or all remote. I guess this is referring to the fact that what I was hinting to before. What if half of the team is in the office and half of the team is at home? Then how do you manage that? I don't know if anyone has any interesting point that wants to share on this. Sumita, you're the first one to unmute.
So early, I think about a month ago, Zoom launched this, 100% employees' choice of how they wanted to get back into the workspace again. And it was something that you could choose by yourself. So it wasn't something that your supervisors would talk to you about. So it was like completely 100% your choice. You could go completely remote if you wanted, go back into the office like regular full time, or you could do a hybrid. And what hybrid meant, I think the definition of hybrid was very interesting of how it was framed. Hybrid meant you could attend, all hands, like a weekly all hands, monthly, or the CEO conversations, things like that. All hands could mean you could run brainstorm sessions with your design team or CSMs and AEs. But the way it was structured is that it wasn't meant to be like be there 9 to 5 in that sort of a position. I think that was very interesting to see how it was defined. So occasionally we do get asked, hey, do you want to come and join the all hands, Eric's talking and things like that. But I think the way it was, sort of the culture was opened up in such a way that everyone's going to be treated the same way in with respect to their work and work style preferences, and the way hybrid was modeled in a way that it put everyone on the same page. The employees that were asked to come full time, obviously those were very specific roles. It made more sense for them to be in the office, and very, very few, like 1 to 3% employees were asked to actually come back, full time. Most of the employees chose to be remote, hybrid, and that made sense. But I think the way the conversation is laid out, the way the culture is sort of put forth to your teams, to the larger organization, and the way we sort of laid down, I think that is very important. And I think companies have done great job. Lots of them have done amazing job in how they have their employees come back. It's a very good retention strategy for companies as well to make sure talent stays where it is. So I think in that sense, I think a lot of companies have done amazingly well. But at the same time, there are companies who have asked employees to come back full time or go fully remote. And I guess that's how they see those specific roles or how they see that culture flowing with their employees. And I think each has its own unique case where it works really well for those teams.
Yeah, I think we had in a chat before someone, I think Dami Lola was the name. Apologies if I pronounced it incorrectly. That was saying that basically a few companies were a bit reactive and others were more proactive, especially the ones that were discussing already going remote before. Because I think we all agree on the fact that remote has a lot of benefit, but also it was very abrupt, right, in the way it started. So another interesting comment that I see here from Abhishek is saying remote work has enabled people to decide when they work, aside from the fact of where they can work from, which I think is a good point, as long as you know where to stop, right? Because I see the risk of this becoming very, work becoming very much everything that you do. I don't know, Ronke, maybe you have something to share. I see you've unmuted.
Yeah, so what I wanted to share was when we started working from home, because of obviously the pandemic is something that we just didn't know how to handle. So we overcompensated. I found that we worked extra hard because we could control work right? That we can control. But what I also found is that we got burned out very quickly from all the Zoom meetings, the virtual discussions. We got burned out, and I kind of feel like there was a disconnect. And so now what I'm finding is that as we are hybrid and going back to work, I don't know, Adam, Remy, I'm not sure if you guys are finding that your teams, your Scrum teams, that the morale is down because everything has changed. For those of us that are going back as a hybrid anyway, I kind of feel like that disconnect is there, that human, interaction, that empathy that you have for your colleagues, it's missing. And so I kind of feel like I'm in a role where not only am I, obviously the product manager, cheerleader, but I'm trying to find ways to inspire my teams. So Remy, I'm not sure if you guys are dealing with that as well.
I'll happily go first there. I think mixing your comments around, sort of making sure that you create the right environment and sort of motivate and empower your teams and continue to do that. That leadership and that mentorship role without putting too much pressure on them. Absolutely. I think bringing in some of the comments from the chat as well, the sort of the 5 levels of remote working, and I think we spoke about this before. That level 4, that asynchronous sort of approach to it, and where a whole company totally adopts the fact that you do work when it suits you, and you have these conversations as they happen, rather than this old style model where everything is linear from 9 to 5. And if I don't respond when a question is asked, I'm a bad employee, or I'm a bad boss, or I'm a bad team member. I think if we can, and I see that happening at Culture Trip, that we really are getting to that point where time doesn't necessarily become a constricting factor anymore. People are doing their things when they want to. It's all about its outcome. It really becomes truly outcome-based working. If we can get to that point, and we have a full understanding across the entire organization that that's how we want to work, I think you can really avoid having people feeling burned out or feeling on the treadmill constantly, and not having that sort of the distance between personal life and work life. But it is something that has to be adopted across the entire organization.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I'll give you the ball, Adam, in a second. I just wanted to add that I saw that comment from Richard as well. I'm not familiar with that framework myself, but I'm guessing what this is hinting is, okay, we went online and basically we did everything that we were doing in the office. We just moved it to Zoom or other competitor platforms, and that's it. We didn't really change anything else. I guess that would be the level 1 or 2 of that framework, and then more and more you progress. Richard or anyone that knows, please chip in if I'm saying something incorrectly. But then, how do you really take it to the next level? So maybe it is indeed interesting to hear from you, Adam, given that you indeed as a company made the choice to be full remote. If you really feel like you are full remote, or you are basically in an office which is on a screen.
No, I don't feel like I'm in an office on a screen. I mean, obviously we have the luxury of owning our own calendar. So I think that's really important as being a PM in the remote workforces. You need to be very cognizant of your time, because it can be strung in very many directions. And if you're not on top of it, you can just let it go and someone else can take your time from you. So I think you do have to be aware that, your time is precious. So be aware of it and manage it yourself. One of the things that's, that has been really, I guess, the mantra of a lot of remote companies is do a lot of asynchronous work, which obviously can lead to burnout. But I think one of the things that I've tried to adopt in my own working life is that a 15-minute call can go a really long way in just having that small face-to-face that you need, but also saving a little bit of time in the back and forth. If you can imagine, if you are talking with 5 different stakeholders during a day asynchronously, that's a lot of context switching, right? And if you think about you having to type up a response, send that over, they're evaluating it, then they have questions, They send that back. And then so you're actually probably taking longer than 15 minutes at the end of the day. And then you multiply that by how many threads you're working at a time. Stop that and focus on finding a small bit of time to do a face-to-face. You not only get that social aspect, but you can probably solve the problem a lot faster too.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because my next point would be indeed how to make it more practical, right? Because up until now we had a discussion which is quite theoretical, but I would like to make this also some practical tips, right? So how do you actually do it in practice? I think this is a good tip of trying to do something more spontaneous, like basically the equivalent of walking to someone's desk, which again used to be very disruptive when we were in the office, but also very effective in a way of getting things done. Anyone else wants to share some very practical items? Sumita, I see your
Yeah. So I think when the pandemic started, everyone was on meetings. Zoom was the way we communicated, and it didn't take very long for the Zoom fatigue to set in. It was painful to just be in meetings. It was soon very well established that being on a meeting 9 to 5 in a constant way wasn't super helpful, wasn't healthy in any way. And then that switch happened to asynchronous. What is it that you can do asynchronous? Let's do that. And then to Adam's point, that was painful too, because you spend like 10 minutes drafting something, thinking about something, and now you have like 60 different chat channels that have opened up, and you feel compelled by the end of the day that you at least see what it is in there. There's a bit of curiosity that all of us across the board share. So really want to know what's going on, what fell through, what didn't. And then you do read it, you unread it, you put like, to-do tasks for yourself. And it's so painful. By the end of the day, you see 40, 100 emails. There's this urge that you want to see what is going on. You want to reply. You want to keep pushing products, because this is one space where you see you can move things. It's everything around you is so stagnant. There is no control. That work seems to be that one space where you can move something. You can, change something. And however tired we were in our personal lives, we just thought like, hey, let work be the thing that takes our mind away from everything that's happening that's so out of control at this point. And that made sense. But soon asynchronous was painful too. Then this idea of, very many people said that let's not do 30 minutes call. Let's make all our calls 15 minutes call. It shouldn't take you more than 15 minutes if you have the right set of people to put across what it is, the problem. Make sure you have an agenda for what you want to talk to about these people. Make sure you have the right people. Don't invite like 30 different people just because you've invited a manager and you want to make sure everyone in their team is in that conversation. No, just key people. And then you have at the end of that 15 minutes, 1 minute before the call ends, you have an action item for everyone who's on the call. Because if there is no action item for everyone who's on that call, then probably you've invited way too many people who did not have to sit through this 15 minutes of agony of just being on a camera and having that smile on their face. So that didn't have to happen. So I think agenda, attendees, action items, that was the framework that we were, at least personally, I was pushing. Did not accept very many calls. And when I did, I wanted to know what the agenda was and what it is that we were talking. And if there were people who did not have to be on that call, let's save them that 15 minutes. Let's get them back to it. I think so that formula worked really well for me.
I think it's great, and I see some people in the chat also commenting. For example, one saying, "In my company, we use Clockwise integrated with Slack to manage the different time zones," which I think is also a good point, right? How to make sure that you respect other people's working hours that might not necessarily be the same as yours. Richard again is saying I guess, Richard, you're a very advanced Slack user, saying you want to use the video and audio recording method to be more efficient. So I think this is all good, but we are also approaching this very much from a task-driven perspective, right? And there were a couple of comments before saying from Paula, I think, apologies, sometimes I'm missing with the comments, but I think it was Paula saying that he's missing the interaction with the people, right? The personal aspect. So I'm wondering, maybe Ronke, do you have anything to share in terms of how to keep that part? So aside from the hardcore productivity, more on the social aspect. You were mentioning at the beginning that you tried cooking classes and stuff like that, which didn't quite work. So why do you think it didn't work?
I think we just got tired of being on videos. We just wanted some time away. So one of the things, I just saw a message by Richard. One of the things we also did in my org is Wednesdays is focus days. There are no meetings on Wednesdays. That gives the team one day to just do work. And that helped with morale. Another thing that helped with morale is when we started, we went from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. So no more meetings during lunch. Nobody schedules 12 o'clock meetings. Between 12 and 1, we respect everybody's calendar. The other thing is, instead of starting a meeting at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m., we started meetings at 9:05. 2:10, not till 10:05. But we started 5 minutes later so that everybody had time for bio breaks. For the in-person, this is kind of funny, but the way I handle that was I walk 4 miles a day. So when I go for my walk, that's when I have my one-on-ones with my team. I call everybody during my walk. And same thing, I noticed that my other colleagues will start walking around the same time that I was walking. Some would actually go to the gym. And so we would actually have our one-on-ones that way. It's not traditional, but it helped us out. And then we're usually like 15-minute blocks, where we're checking with this person, checking with that person, checking with that person. And sometimes believe it or not, if I need to have more than one person to figure out a problem, I would actually conference in 3 people, 4 people. We would do like a FaceTime while I was walking, and we got a lot done. The other thing I did for my team was I would actually just randomly call them and check in 10 minutes a day, just to check in. I would just use Teams or Slack and just say, hey, checking in, how are you? The other thing I wanted to mention is I've kind of felt like COVID impacted a lot of my female colleagues, a lot of women in my org, in general. By that, I mean women were most likely to get laid off in the middle of the pandemic, but they also had their kids and they had their family, right? Their husbands, but also they had extended family members, right? And they were the ones taking care of them. So there's a lot of empathy there that I had to, make sure that I had for my colleagues there. So what I did was, if they had children, I wouldn't set up a meeting until 9:05, because between 8 and 8:30, they were busy getting the kids ready for school or putting them in front of a laptop for virtual learning. In the middle of the day, they were checking in with their kids for virtual learning. So you have to be respectful of that too. And record calls if they couldn't make a meeting, I would record it. After 4, same thing with 4 o'clock, a lot of them had to pick up their kids. So those are some of the things that we've done that has actually helped. But Wednesdays is just sacrilegious. Nobody sets up a meeting. And also same thing with our colleagues who are in other country. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we set up meetings, but nothing after 9 p.m. our time in California and so forth.
Yeah, I see. Thanks for sharing, Ronke. I see Brian also saying a no meeting day. This is also something, by the way, that we tried when I was booking. That worked, I think, quite well until people realized that no meeting day is a very good way of finding free spot in the calendar and then start putting meetings on that day, which then kind of defeated the purpose. I love the question from Nate, because it's exactly the thing that I was thinking. When you do the one-on-one walking, how do you keep the notes? Because I was thinking exactly the same. I sometimes do one-on-one walkings, but I always find that I don't know what to do if I need to jot something down. So do you walk with a notepad?
So my iPhone, I stop and my iPhone, I type a little note to myself right away, so that when I come back to the office, when I come back to the apartment, then I could just send out an email. But basically, I stop, draft a note, and sometimes I even send myself an email during the walk. So
good. Okay, thanks. So I think anyone else tried anything on the morale and motivation part? Because I think that's an interesting point, right? When you were in the office, maybe it was also quite easy. I think you said something interesting, Ronke, around people maybe struggling with their personal commitment, and this is just not seen, right? I guess in the office before, if somebody was maybe struggling with something, you could walk by their desk and see that maybe they are not doing so well and invite them for a coffee. Now, if they are beyond the screen and they don't have their camera on, you don't know what is happening. So how do you keep that connection? Anyone else? I see Adam unmuted. Maybe you want to add something.
Well, one of the things that we did, I mean, it's lame to say, but I think that just having a dedicated time to do nothing with your team on, say, Friday morning, just say, here's a 30-minute block and we have no agenda. We're just going to talk about what we're going to do this weekend, or what are our plans. Just getting to know the team, kind of just having follow-ups on what did you do last time when I guess, did you run a marathon last weekend? How did that go? Having normal conversations just kind of helps bring people back together. So that's one thing we tried, and we're still doing it too. So it's been a little bit successful.
Okay, I think on this point, and then we'll move on. I see Criso commenting, by the way. Hi, Criso, thanks for joining. I see also the comment of, not everyone maybe really were like, how do you balance? I think I'm rephrasing the question, and so Criso, chip in if I'm doing it incorrectly, but basically the question, as I understand it, is how do you balance the fact that more people might be more prone to remote than others? Maybe some people are really tuned to the remote working, some others really crave that human contact. So how do you balance a team where maybe some members are really, no, I'm never coming back to the office, never or ever, regardless of whatever situation, and some others are like, well, I'll be happy in the office every day, actually, if we could. Sumita, I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So during the pandemic, I think one question that often came up to me is when I was hiring, how do you hire this broad team where some people are very keen on getting back to the office and some are upfront, hey, I want to be a remote employee. But that is the way you have to manage this product, and that's the new reality of it. So some remote, some hybrid, and some probably regular. Apart from what works, the logistics of how you plan your day around these different teams that you have, your immediate teams and the larger teams that you work with, what was more important for me, at least, is that those one-on-one conversations that I was having with my team, typically we would do syncs. Hey, we would do like an update conversations, and conversations about what went with overseas engineering, overseas design, and things like that. All that helped. The logistics of setting up those conversations helped. But I think what was the difficult conversation to have was the career conversations, because it's the same question again. Are we looking at people in remote spaces, in regular or hybrid, on the same level? Everybody had those questions. Hey, if I'm not an office in a regular employee, I'm being scaled differently because I've chosen to be remote and things like that. So having those one-on-one conversations was really important. Specifically, like to Ranki's point, women were getting laid out. It was a very difficult choice for a lot of women in product at that point, whether it was a good time to take a break, to get back to the office. How do I choose between children who are probably not even at the age of doing virtual learning? They were just infants, so there was no way for them to sort of understand. So they took a break. So how does that affect their broader career plans and things like that? So those conversations were really important, because you want to make sure, first, you retain great talent. Second, you want to make sure these teams feel empowered by you. You don't want them to feel like, hey, like the team needs you, but you don't want that, the need to be like a pressure on them. So how do you sort of empower all these people around you? I think for me it was understanding those particular issues than around the logistics of how I would set up these conversations or things like that. I think radical candor never made more sense, I think, than in the pandemic. It was very important to have those conversations, but how you structure them, how do you frame them, how does that feedback have meaningful impact and actionable impact for them? I think those were not just difficult to consume, but those were also difficult for me to frame in my mind before I sort of delivered what it is that I had plans for. I think especially so some teams did great because hey, this is the pandemic, I'm going to keep my head down, I'm just going to keep working, and this is the way for me. But for others, it was oh my God, this is the pandemic. I need to survive this pandemic while I have a job, while I have a sane or sane-ish family life. So it was, everybody had their different goals. And as a manager, I think you need to set expectations, but also deliver on those expectations. It's not like everybody sets goals for themselves, but you also set goals for your team. What is it that you want to achieve with this broader, things that are so asymmetric in your team?
Yeah. So I think we all agree that we are part of a great experiment, let's say, of a great transition phase. So there's a lot of learning. I see some people sharing more learnings. Thank you for doing that in the chat. Planned unstructured time. Yeah, the mandatory social is tough. Yeah, when I read that comment, I thought, yeah, who, in the good old days, who would ever meet at the coffee machine and then immediately disconnect after 5 minutes? I mean, maybe you did if you had another meeting, but that's also something that's different. But I now want to move the conversation. And by the way, if you have any more comments or questions that maybe I missed in the chat, feel free to post them again, or Caitlin put them in the presenter section so that I will take them later. But up until now, we talked a lot about really remote work in general, not really product management work. So I want to make a question on that and ask you, the panel, so whoever wants to go first, feel free to jump on it. Has product management actually changed? In what ways? Because I'm now imagining some of the initiatives that we used to do as product managers, like mapping things with post-its. Like you would not believe when I went back to the office and I saw a post-it for the first time. It was like, I've met my good old friend. I've missed you so much. So how has product specifically changed from a remote perspective, really in very practical terms? Ronke, you are the fastest.
Yeah. So I would say that workshops has changed. Whenever we need to have workshops, we rely heavily now on Miro to do those. I would say that Miro schedule, and I have to schedule like an hour and a half with the team to do workshop sessions, one a day. That's what I've been doing. Whereas before COVID, we would all be in a conference room all day, putting stickies on the board, right? Now it's an hour and a half, one day, and a bunch of us in Miro. What has also changed for us is that we need to compete in a digital market for small businesses and large businesses. So therefore, we need to be faster at creating tools and features so that they can operate their business, manage and grow their business. So that has changed for me in a way, because we've had to iterate faster, get stuff to market, rely a lot on product intuition, and fail quickly and recover, basically. So I've had to change also, making sure that design drives the conversation. That's another thing I've had to do, because again, that in person is missing. So I can't just talk to another engineer right now from another team. So if I have a wireframe, a high level wireframe, it makes it easier, because then even though we're virtual, we're looking at the same experience. So those are some of the things. And then of course, getting the teams to move faster.
I think I see, Remy, you are muted. I'll give you the floor in a second. What I wanted to add is, I see some people, by the way, sending a rest in peace to the sticky pads. I think it's also something that we can share. Long live Miro, I would add. But my question was more on, is it really, because you just described the situation. Basically, you said, okay, we used to do something that took 2 days and now takes 2 hours. So we become much more efficient. My question would be, did we become more efficient, or did we become more superficial?
No, not efficient. That's not what I meant. What I meant is that normally before COVID, we would go into a conference room for 2 days and everybody was present. Everybody was away from their desk. So you were in this conference room. We were doing a workshop together. We were interacting, right? With being home, I can't take 8 hours of your day. I can't take 6 hours of your day or 4 hours of your day. So instead, I do an hour and a half, condense it for that one. That's it for that one day. I don't have the luxury of 8 hours in person. And then the next day, I will schedule another 1.5 hours. The day after that, I'll schedule another 1.5 hours. So that's how we've had to change during workshops. Because we're remote right now, and also because people get burnt out so easily, and people get tired, and and they have kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's what we've been doing. But what I wanted to, my larger point is that we are now the market has changed. We have to compete in the digital economy, which means you have to produce products and features faster than you were before. So that means that you need to fail quickly. And then recover, and then reiterate it, and then go to fix it afterwards. So that's why I tend to focus a lot on using design to drive a lot of my conversation. I don't know if,
Yeah. Okay. Great. Perfect. And yeah, I can see in the chat. I did not realize, by the way, that there were a Miro and a Mural competing sides. I didn't know we uncovered something like an Apple versus Android type of thing. I did not realize this until today. Remy, do you want to add something?
Yeah, whilst we're on the, let me add the Amazon to it as well with FigJam, which is something we use extensively at Culture Trip. But no, I think the things that changed massively in terms of how we do product, but also changed for me as a product manager, two things, right? I think we all had to learn the skill of facilitating a lot more. To Ronke's point, right? If you, yes, you may not be a sort of, you may spend the same amount of time spread over multiple virtual sessions, or you need to be much more skilled at facilitating a group, because it's very hard to do. It's not very hard. It's harder to do that in a purely sort of virtual environment than it is if you have people in a room around a whiteboard. The other thing on the facilitation part, I have really sort of partnered with other people in my team on the facilitation part to sort of take turns. So I'll start a session, but I have a head of product design sort of take over after an hour and a half, because I will get exhausted and I will lose my ability to effectively facilitate a session. So I think that's definitely something I gained. I think the other thing that fundamentally changed for the positive, well, I think the facilitation is also for the positive, but is all of our customers were all of a sudden much more readily available to us, right? I could, like, where previously it was much harder to get access to customers, now all of a sudden they were all at home and they were all just one video call away. So I think I've had a lot more virtual face-to-face interaction with my customers over the last couple of years than I had ever before, because it was so much easier. So for me, those are the two real sort of changes to product management for me.
Yes, thanks. And Richard, by the way, not just shipping features faster and faster, but delivering value to users. Yes, I think I agree to that 100%. Everyone in the call I see nodding. So yes, for sure. I actually have my own podcast called Making Value Podcast, which is all about delivering value through product management. So there you go. That was a perfect opportunity there. But jokes aside, I have a question for you, Sumita, because you worked at Zoom, and obviously Zoom is one of the culprits, let's say, of this situation, or at least is the tool that many of us really got to use and experience on a daily basis for multiple hours. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective as a product manager at Zoom, of course, this is a great opportunity because now you have a lot of users, but do you think from a Zoom perspective on how to make these interactions better and more efficient, maybe how to add features that are going to make Zoom a better platform for remote working?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I think probably 6 to 8 months into the pandemic, the idea was set very clearly. Zoom does meetings really well. Zoom is a very synchronous platform, but the fatigue sort of set in. So what could we do to let our users still get that value from Zoom, but opt to different channels of communication? So we did Zoom apps for that. We built Zoom apps. Zoom apps are essentially your window to access other ecosystems like ServiceNow, Salesforce, whatever that you are. So the core idea was to Ronke's point earlier, you don't have 8 hours of everyone dedicated on a particular project. So you sort of split it into 3 different chunks. So there is a pre-meeting, there is a post meeting. Sorry, there is the meeting and there is a post meeting. So you need to be able to switch context and carry that context to 3 different places. So that was the problem we were solving at that point. And that made sense. There were productivity tools that we worked on, but soon it made sense to sort of pivot into more of a team building, space, because that was very important. So we had Zoom apps, which had a lot of, team building apps like Funvity. So you could have like a team get together. You could probably do a virtual, a quiz or trivia night, whatever. And obviously, to that point, we pivoted in that direction. But I think the most important change that was something that was really remarkable was in the way that we looked at integrations. Specifically, how do we enable users to be in this one ecosystem that they're in? So if you are a Microsoft shop and you leverage Zoom, how do we make sure we ask you to stay in the place where you are? We don't ask users to make those difficult choices and switch, but just give them that space. Okay, you want to be in Teams, do use Zoom meetings, integrations. So that was the path. We did not look at this as a cannibalization of, hey, we want everyone to be in Zoom client, Teams client. That line sort of really started blurring out. We just wanted users to be where you are and leverage the tool as it is. It is a tool. It should be able to solve this one golden problem for you. Let's just do that one problem. So I think that is where Zoom pivoted. We went in different direction, but the core problem was always to make sure that we did meetings really well. How do we help users switch context? And let's just focus on that problem. So I think that is the path that I am currently working on in strategic integration. So I think as someone inside of Zoom, I would definitely say that we've pivoted over the pandemic, and we sort of understand the pulse of our users, because this is the platform that they start their day on, and probably is the last thing that they do over the day. So you want to make sure it is as seamless as possible. But putting the tool aside, I don't think the tool or the company or the organization is relevant if the users are not really happy with what it does. If we cannot listen to what the users want, if we cannot really make things a little pain-free for them in various ways that product management does it, then I don't think it's a good platform to be on. So I think just pick one problem and just solve that one problem. Don't try to spread yourself too thin, because it might not really work so well at the very end.
Thanks. Maybe Adam, from your perspective at Calendly, you obviously work on a tool which I guess that's the objective of making time schedule efficient. So how did your point of view from what you know from the company changed following the remote switch? Because I presume the product now has become even more relevant, or maybe no, I don't know. What's your point of view?
Yeah, we definitely have seen a lot of growth in adoption of the product since obviously COVID happened. I actually have only been part of the company since going remote, so I can't speak to how the culture has changed. We've also seen significant growth in terms of personnel, that we've doubled in just a year's time frame in people. So I think part of this goes back to my original point of if everyone's completely remote, no one's feeling disenfranchised as part of the workforce. So you're not walking into a team who gets together every week, and you're missing out on a lot of things. Everybody's in the same boat as you are. So I think making that choice was a really positive thing when we're going through this growth in people. So.
Good, thanks. We have 5 minutes left, so anyone who wants to ask more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. I also wanted to go a quick round, given that we are talking about tools, and just ask the panel, what's your favorite tool to use during the pandemic? Except for the ones that Adam, you cannot say Calendly, and Sumita, you cannot say Zoom, by the way, that's forbidden. So no own product, but what's the favorite tool that you are using on a daily basis to manage your work?
Miro, only because Miro and Figma. I'm just going to say those two. Miro because tons of notes in Miro's. I can distill it later into Confluence. Figma, because we can also add notes into Figma, but also Figma has, let's say, the high-level wireframe, and we can kind of, grab screenshots and stuff. And the other reason is I can grab screenshots from anywhere and post it right into Miro and into Figma as well. So I kind of have a history of all the workshops that we've been having.
Thanks. Remy.
Slack huddles. I think I always, even when we were still in an office, I said if someone is sitting less than 100 meters away from you, get up and have a conversation in person. Don't do it over Slack. For me, huddle is the virtual version of that, where rather than just typing someone something, I'll just set up a quick huddle and have that almost human kind of conversation at the desk or in some other way.
Adam.
So I guess I would be remiss to not say Slack as well, because Slack was definitely a game changer for us. That really made it a lot easier to work. One of the things that has now made it a lot easier to not only use Slack and Slack huddles or any asynchronous or synchronous type of meeting is also integrating with, I use an app called Reclaim. I think Clockwise is another app that you could probably use too, but something that kind of integrates with Slack that tells somebody that, hey, this person is in a meeting, don't worry about pinging them. Because I always had an issue with asking people, are you free? I asked that question on 50 times a day. I feel like, are you free? Can we just chat for a really quick second? And so being able to see that someone is available, that's really, really helpful.
Great. And Sumita.
I really liked Hive Notes. Over the past year, I've sort of used them really well in meeting, off meeting, sort of carry those notes with me. I think that worked really well. I want to say also a lot of fun witty apps really takes my mind off. Reclaim was one. It was amazing. Have Reclaim take some time off for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I think early pandemic that just made a lot of sense. But I would say, to top it all off in a very humorous way, I think Reddit and TikTok really made life so much easier for me during pandemic. It was a great way to sort of just switch off and look at the world and then come back, because any amount of focus time did not help at that point. So you needed all these other, I think Netflix was good. Lots of content takes your mind off with a good lunch. So I think all those were really helpful. And yeah, I'm glad we have all those to pull us through the pandemic.
Thanks. I think we have a couple of questions now that we'll try to answer as efficiently as we can. We also have one very quick one from Yolene, which was the name of the note-taking app, Sumita?
Hive Notes. Let me type it out here.
Thanks. So first question, Hive Notes. There it is. First question from Abhishek. Whoever wants to go for it, we are a bit tight on time, so let's be efficient in the answer. But sorry, I just missed it now. Okay. How do you think the product management world needs to mentally prepare for a hybrid world where in the coming days we will both be in person and online meetings will be the norm? I think we touched upon it. Maybe some last piece of advice from any brave volunteer. I would say from my point of view, the key is the flexibility, is respecting everyone's point of view. So some people will be in person, some people will be online, but as long as you have an open communication with the team, you can try to be efficient in that way. That's at least how it's working on my side. Harriet, how do you help your team with fatigue from staring at the screen all day rather than spend some hours on the day away from the computer? Very good point. Well, take the one-to-ones walking. We'll learn that. But have your phone to take notes. Anyone else from Remy or Sumita?
Yeah, I was going to say we've introduced this flexi working policy where without having to announce or sort of ask permission from anyone, it's understood that you can say, oh, I'm just going to be away for a couple of hours to either walk the dog or do some exercise or just be away, and that's completely fine. We introduced a set of rules around how you flag that to your colleagues. It's fully understood, and that has really helped creating that time for people to have some time away from the screen.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I think you encouraging everyone in your team to put out of office, go take walks, go take lunch. It's really important. Coffee breaks, encouraging everyone to have those are really good. But I think no meeting, whatever day that your org chooses, that is the best way that I have seen so far. It really helps. Not just that it gets work done, because we get work done even during meetings, but I think it's really important that everybody takes a day off. It's just mental health preparedness, and we need advocates who also talk about that wellness coaching that people talk about. I think that the no meeting days, I think those are really powerful.
Very good. Perfect. Thank you. I think that's all the time that we have allocated for us. It's been a pleasure moderating the panel. Thanks everyone for the questions. Hopefully it was useful. And that's it. Over to you, Kathleen.
Thanks so much, Alessandro, and thanks to all our panelists. That was a great session. Thank you so much, and great questions in the chat as well, and thanks for staying engaged and contributing to the discussion. So yeah, big thank you to everyone all around, and stay with us. We've got our next session coming up in 15 minutes from Amplitude. So looking forward to that, and we shall see you all soon.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.